Hi guys, Greg here from Sweet Delilah's. For those that don't know me, I'm one of Delilah's pet humans. And today on Delilah Plays, we're going to talk about Magic the Gathering. So what is Magic the Gathering? Well, Magic the Gathering is a collectible trading card game produced by Wizards of the Coast, which many of you might know from their Dungeons & Dragons line. And it's set in their multiverse universe. The multiverse is a massive expanse of distinct worlds with their own people, creatures, such as the one here, spells, and environments. You are a planeswalker, a rare and powerful type of archmage that possesses the ability to travel between these realms and harness the unique magics found there. Generally, with each release of a new Magic expansion, he either creates a new world or expands on a world in the multiverse, which gives us new cards to create our decks. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing we're going to do is get rid of this cat so I can show you the cards. And then, in this first video, we'll go over what those basic types of cards are and the key points you'll need to know to play. And in our second video, we'll build a deck and show you what a few game turns look like. And you are super high on catnip right now, yes you are. And we're back. And we've done the proper sacrifices and appeased the mighty beast, so maybe she'll leave us alone a little bit and let me talk to you guys about mana. And mana is your main resource for this game. It comes in 5 different colors. You can see here we have white, blue, black, red, and green. And depending on which type of mana you choose, it's really going to change how your deck's going to function, what kind of monsters and spells you're going to have access to. And we'll start over here with white. White is represented by the sunburst symbol and flows forth from planes. This is generally where you're going to find your soldiers, clerics, angels, your goody two-shoes type of fantasy monsters that we're used to. Next with blue, which comes from islands, represented by the little water droplet. And blue is best known as a magic deck. There's lots of spells, it can disrupt your opponents, and really controls the field. It's also known for letting you draw a lot of extra cards and having a ton of flying creatures. Next, black, which comes from swamps and represented by the little skull symbol, which I'm sure you all know where this is going. Disease, death, power at any cost. Black, you'll find a lot of undead, necromancers, that type of thing. It's best known for destroying your opponent's creatures, forcing you to pay your extra costs to really activate your most powerful abilities, such as sacrificing your own life points or even your own creatures. Next, we have mountains, which is your red mana, and represented by the little fireball symbol. These are really quick-hitting decks. They can act really fast. Dragons, everybody loves dragons, mostly known for red. You can put out massive amounts of damage a lot quicker than other mana colors. And it focuses a lot on one-shot damage spells. Lastly, we have green, which is forest, and obviously represented by the little tree. Green is best known for being a brute force type of thing. It has a lot of really powerful monsters, and it's known to be able to strip enchantments, artifacts from your enemy, and most importantly, for green at least, it's really capable of getting rid of flyers, which certain colors tend to struggle with. So let's look at the individual cards themselves. Your most common cards you're going to run into are land cards, which are your mana cards here at the top. Then you have your sorcery cards, such as this one here. Sorceries are your spell cards. You can cast them only on your turn, and they can't be used to respond to your opponent's spell. But it gives you a little extra flexibility on your turn. Like this one here, for instance, lets me summon extra monsters. Next we have instants, which we have right here. Now with instants, they're spells just like a sorcery card are, but you can cast these anytime. So if your opponent casts a sorcery spell, you don't like it, maybe you have an instant that lets you cancel out another spell card. And you'd be able to play that right away as long as you can pay the cost, which we'll get into here in a little bit. Next, we have enchantments. Enchantment. Now, these are best described as a buff. Usually an enchantment, you cast it on another creature or something similar, and it gives them a little bit of a boost. In that situation, they'd be called an aura card. Sometimes they can just be used on the battlefield itself, but the most common ones you're going to run into are auras. Next, I guess the beast didn't decide to stay away. Next, we have artifacts. Now, artifacts are a little different. A lot of the time they are colorless, which means you can use any type of mana to summon them. This one is not, as you can see here. It requires different types of mana. Now, artifacts are your magical items. Your normal artifacts will work a lot like enchantment. You'll equip them to a monster and it'll give them a bit of a buff. Or there could also be artifact creatures, which, as you can see here, this one's a true colorless, no specific mana symbol on the top card. Let's look at the basic makeup of your cards. So if we look at this card here for white, the Night Guard Patrol, on your upper left, you'll always have the card name. Directly across from that, you'll have the mana cost. Now this little symbol here, as you've probably already figured out, stands for colorless. So this card costs 3 mana to cast. I'll need 1 white land, and then this 2 can be paid with any color. So if I had, say, a white-red deck, I could use 2 red and a white, or 3 whites, as long as I meet that number. Next, you have your descriptor. It'll tell you what the card is. This is a creature, sorcery, instant, and then what type it is. And then over here, this little symbol, which you'll ignore most of the time, will tell you what deck, or expansion rather, that it came from. This symbol is for Ravinica. Then below it we have our little text box. And in your text box, it'll tell you everything you need to know about the card. If it has any special abilities, they'll be here in regular. Like this one has a special ability called First Strike and Vigilance, which we'll get into in a different video. And then at the bottom, sometimes, but not always, they'll give you italics text, which is a little bit of lore or flavor text. And honestly, this is my favorite type of magic card. Then below that, this is the artist who came up with the card. And at the bottom, your standard Wizards of the Coast trademark. And this little number beside it here lets you order your card if you're a collector. Like this card is number 26 out of 306 for this set. And lastly, most importantly, when you're talking about monsters, right here you have your power and your toughness. Now your power is how much damage you'll do to your enemy's monsters. And your toughness is how much damage this card can take before it dies. So you'll take all these cards once you decide what color you want to play. And I really recommend going down to your local game store. They generally have, at the very least, a Friday Night Magic event. It's sponsored by Wizards of the Coast. There might be some people there that have an extra deck, let you try out different colors. The store might even have some decks. Get a feel for the different colors. Once you pick it, your easiest way to get involved is to pick up a starter deck of that color. And if you want to get a little more advanced as you figure out the game, you can start combining colors. Like myself, I personally prefer a blue and black deck, but that's just me. Generally your deck, depending on what you make the deck for, will either have 40 cards or around 60 cards. Now your constructed deck, that's your deck you're probably going to end up playing with your friends or at the game store when you're trying to learn. The minimum amount of cards that you can use is 60. You can have no maximum limit of cards, but unfortunately the more cards you have, the harder it is going to be to get enough mana, or you might not, I might need this card, but instead I draw this card. Having less cards makes it easier, but having no maximum limit means you can add a lot more types. I know a couple guys that play with 4 colors. In a tournament, depending on the rules, sometimes it's a sealed draft. You play with whatever cards you get. Other times you can bring your own deck, but either way, those minimums will be 40 cards. And the last thing to keep in mind is unless it's anything besides a land, you can only have 4 copies in your entire deck. So I would only be able to have 4 two-headed Cerberuses, for instance. But I could have any number of land cards. So that's about it for the basic concepts. In our next video, we'll go over how to play the game itself, and we'll demo a few turns just to give you guys an idea of how the game plays out. And today on Delilah Plays, we're going to take a look at Magic the Gathering. Oh, shit. Oh. Thank you for your assistance, Delilah. Don't attack the card.